This episode was inevitable. The Engineer is arguably Spy's most interesting matchup. However, it is very important to get a major misconception out of the way immediately. Spy does not counter Engineer. Engineer has a lot of options when it comes to fighting back against Spies. Spy is less of a counter to Engineer, but more so his foil. Both are the most complex classes in the game by a rather large margin. But whereas Engineer is about setting up defensive holds and providing powerful support to his team, the Spy is all about infiltrating the enemy team and disrupting them from within. As they are both forces of the opposite things, when on opposing teams, it's very natural that they'll come into conflict with each other. Now, considering how complex of a class Engineer is, it's best that you understand how he works before fighting him. More specifically, the machines he's able to conjure, and your main tool against them. The Engineer has a total of 4 buildings: the sentry gun, the dispenser, the teleporter entrance, and the teleporter exit, all of which can be upgraded to level 3, increasing their efficiency in some way, though the levels of the teleporters are linked, as both upgrade at the same time, and if one is destroyed, the other resets back to level 1.
Okay, but what do the buildings actually do?
Sentry shoot bad guy with aimbot, dispenser give health and ammo to good guys, and teleporter disrupts quantum physics to make good guy go from entrance to exit. That's your TLDR. But being the funny Frenchman known as the Spy, you have the unique ability to disguise as enemy players, and the buildings will always fall for your disguise. No acting necessary. Sentries won't shoot, dispensers will heal you, and teleporters for some reason don't actually care if you're disguised or not. They'll still take you anyway, but I would not recommend taking it without a disguise.
I'm killing you.
Curiously enough though, the cloak only fools the sentry, which is nice because it's the one that kills you. But what's nicer is that it means that enemy dispensers and teleporters will still work even if you're cloaked.
They possess vision beyond our own.
When it comes to actually destroying buildings as Spy, this is where your Electro Sapper comes into play. In fact, this is its only purpose. You can right-click on buildings to place the Sapper. This will instantly disable it and start eating away at its health.
Hey, what about the red tape recorder?
When the Sapper is placed, the Engineer will immediately be alerted to this predicament and will audibly yell,
Spy Sapper by Sentry!
The Sapper can be destroyed by 2 hits with all wrenches, except the Jag, which takes 3. Unlike when using the knife or revolver, placing a Sapper does not drop your disguise, but if you stab someone within the line of sight of the sentry, it will turn to shoot you.
Die!
This is where things get messy. There are many different techniques when it comes to actually attempting to take down a nest, and they're all useful in different situations. The most basic but iconic of techniques: when the Engineer is behind his sentry, backstab him, immediately switch to your Sapper, and place it on the sentry before it shoots you. The sentry takes a quick second to lock onto its target, and even longer if it has to turn around to face you. This is why the stab and sap works. It is recommended to turn on fast weapon switch when using this technique, as you can instantly switch weapons by pressing the number keys. This is the reverse. You sap the building, then attempt to stab the Engineer when he comes to repair it, either by hiding and sneaking up on him, or using it to set up a trick stab. Sap the sentry to disable it, then immediately open fire upon the Engineer, who will either retaliate or attempt to remove the Sapper in the chaos. Your goal is to kill the Engineer before he succeeds at either. When doing this, it's smart to plan for if the Sapper gets removed mid-fight. Since the sentry has a split-second delay before it can function again, you can either stick near the sentry to reapply your unlimited supply of Sappers on it, or be ready to run to cover. Sapping a building will almost always cause the Engineer to come for it. You can use this to bait the Engineer into an unfavorable position away from the sentry to kill them or waste time. Sap the building of choice and then immediately open fire upon it to destroy it as fast as possible. Sap sentries have a hidden 33% resistance to the revolver, but this isn't enough to not make this technique viable. This technique is best done suddenly when the Engineer isn't ready for it, especially when they aren't close to that building in particular. You want to give them as little time to react as possible.
Reminder that the damage a sentry gun takes is unaffected by damage fall-off, allowing you to do cheeky things like this.
If the engineer is standing within sight of a sentry, but not right next to it, you can quickly stab the engineer and run to cover before it shoots you. Run in and spam sappers on everything. The hope is that while the engineer is occupied trying to remove the sappers and the sentry isn't working, your teammates will capitalize on it and destroy the nest. This works best when you plan it out with your teammates, especially if it's during an Uber. The sentry can't be repaired whatsoever until the sapper is removed, so this is massively powerful when coordinated. Sap the entrance and stand on it while disguised. The hope is that the engineer will remove it while standing on the exit, causing you to teleport into his hitbox, instantly killing him, which is known as a telefrag.
Warning, this usually only fools newer players.
If for some reason the engineer leaves his buildings completely unattended or is dead, you can just sap the whole thing and leave. GG easy. This list is by no means all strategies you can use against engineers, but it's some of the most essential ones. When you first discover an engineer nest, it's often best to take note of where all the buildings are placed, and try to judge the experience level of the engineer in question. This can allow you to figure out how you're going to take out the nest, and when. Some engineers will be more aware and harder to deal with than others, and may require varied or creative strategies. Because engineers usually stay within the back lines, once they're done setting up, their team can take some of the pressure off of them, which gives them free time to check for spies if nothing else is happening. But one of the biggest advantages you have as the spy is that you are almost always the one who starts the fight. Therefore, you have more control over when it happens. You can take your time to get your bearings, and you can wait for an opportunity to strike. When you first discover an engineer nest, here's a few things you should take note of. How much is the engineer running around? Are the buildings fully upgraded yet? If not, it could cause a distraction. Is the engineer standing behind a sentry a lot, or is he moving around? Where is the teleporter exit, and can it be exploited? Are the buildings clumped together or spread out? Spread out buildings typically indicate a more experienced engineer. Are there multiple engineers? How many of their teammates are around? These are factors to be aware of that can either make it easier or harder to take out a nest. Account for these things and look for an opportunity, of which the engineer's own buildings can actually provide you with some. Since Disguise is full dispensers, you can actually get health and ammo off of it for yourself. And even better, it's able to refill your cloak meter. This is what I like to call dispenser leeching. If you disguise, cloak, and stand on top of an enemy dispenser, you can remain cloaked indefinitely, while getting healed. At level 1, it'll keep your cloak meter where it is, but at level 2 or 3, it'll actually refill it. This can also be a good trick for waiting out an opportunity or observing undercover, aka discount cloak and dagger. Engineers themselves rarely stand on the dispenser unless using it for leverage, or because of that glitch where standing on top of it gives you double metal. But watch out for enemy players standing inside it and colliding with you. Some engineers may use dispensers to block potential spies, but there are very few situations where it can't be jumped over or has another path around. Because the dispenser is the least important building to destroy, if you kill the engineer and successfully sap the rest of the nest, it may even be worth quickly disguising and using the dispenser yourself before destroying that too. Play around the dispenser right, and it can actually help you. Play around the sentry wrong, and it'll kill. When destroying a nest, the sentry is the main building you need to play around. And while the level 3 rockets can miss, it doesn't matter because the aimbot bullets of a level 1 can kill you in 2 seconds after it starts firing, and level 2 halves that time. You don't want to be uncloaked and undisguised around a sentry unless it's right about to be sapped or already is.
Hello! Are you having trouble maintaining your cover between stabs? Try the Your Eternal Reward. The stabs are almost silent and instantly disguise you as your backstab victim. It's so instant that you can stab someone in front of a sentry and it won't even turn to shoot you, giving you more options to approach a nest. Wait, what are you doing? No, don't skip, please. I'm not done.
When you're attacking a nest, the sentry should almost always be the first building you sap. This isn't just because the sentry is dangerous, but when you sap any of the buildings, you have officially begun the encounter. The engineer immediately knows that there is a spy present, and depending on where his buildings are placed, he'll know exactly where you are at that point in time. He is going to retaliate very angrily. You have essentially called the engineer to that position, which is why it's best to make the sentry the first building you take out of play, even if temporarily. Though if one of the buildings is placed outside of the sentry's range, you can sap that first to make the engineer leave the sentry. This can either be used for a distraction, a setup for an unexpected stab, or to lure him away from his sentry to take him out. Because as we know,
Engineer has a shotgun. You think the engineer is defenseless? Foolish. Good engineers know they can fight back without having to rely on a sentry. The shotgun is great at close range, but falls off somewhat at medium to long range where the pistol becomes more viable.
The revolver is sort of a hybrid between the two, and considering that both have the same max health, you're both kind of evenly matched.
It's just a matter of who has better movement and aim and who got the jump on the other one first, and Spy isn't the only one who can sneak up on their opponent.
You can also attempt a trick stab, but know that the engineer is capable of killing you in 2 hits with his melee, unless our least favorite mechanic in the game is in play.
Anyway, you were going to talk about teleporters now?
Yep. As you can take enemy teleporters, this can be used for all kinds of tricks. Teleporters are often placed right inside the nest, so it may actually be worth finding the entrance, as you can use it to get right to the unsuspecting engineer. On top of that, players who recently used a teleporter have this team-colored glow effect, which can actually help sell your disguise because it makes you look like a teammate who just arrived and is getting their bearings, allowing you to get closer to the engineer. Also, as mentioned previously, if you get teleported inside the hitbox of an enemy player, they rupture instantly. But just randomly taking the teleporter has the chance of telefragging some random unfortunate player. And if the engineer is turtling and standing on top of his teleporter the whole time... Oh yeah, and when near enemy teleporters, be careful about running over them because it might just get you killed in one of the dumbest ways possible.
I am so stupid. I am so stupid. I walked over a teleporter and someone came through.
Now that we've talked about how to play around each of the buildings, which one should you destroy first? The ultimate victory over a Nester's spy is to kill both the engineer and sap all the buildings. However, you don't always have to try to do it all at once. Even just killing the engineer or getting a key building destroyed can lead
to further problems.
The 4 main components that make up a nest are the engineer, sentry, dispenser, and teleporters, each serving the function of maintenance, defense, supply, and transport respectively. Destroying any one of them will eliminate that component of the nest until it can be rebuilt, and can cripple the livelihood of the rest of the nest. Eliminating the engineer himself leaves the buildings without maintenance. While Pybros may be able to remove sappers if they have the Neon or Homewrecker equipped, they still lack the ability to repair damage, reload the gun, or upgrade buildings, meaning your team may quickly overwhelm the nest before the engineer returns. If multiple engineers are present, they may be able to help look after the nest. However, nests may be spread out to cover more ground, and engineers are only alerted when their own buildings start having issues. If the nests are clumped together into some abomination, then it's probably a good time to mention that spies aren't the only class that can destroy.
Hey, I'm back. Did you also know that because the YER is so quiet, it's really good at taking out multiple engineers at once, since none of them will even know before it's too late? The multiple sentries give them a false sense of security that this wonderful knife can exploit. Targeted ads are great, aren't they? Anyway, I'm done this time.
Destroy nests. An uber-charged soldier or dimmerman may actually be better in this situation due to their explosives. You can either switch class, or coordinate with the ubered peer to sap buildings at the same time. Of course, considering the engineer is actually sentient, you often have to be careful about when and how you attack. The sentry is good at stopping overconfident power classes from pushing into the back line, and defends the rest of the nest. If destroyed, it leaves the rest of the nest very vulnerable to attack, as the engineer frantically attempts to rebuild it. Without the sentry, a random flanker will be able to enter their back line. Your scout and pyro will especially love you for this. If you manage to destroy the sentry, but some of the nest still remains, it's best to alert your team that this is the case so they can immediately capitalize on it and finish what you started. And yes, I know team coordination isn't that common in casual games, blah blah blah, but hey, it's worth a shot. The dispenser is almost always the lowest on the priority list, as it has the least immediate impact if destroyed, and can even help you. Destroying it is still a massive inconvenience for the engineer and his team that was using it, but you don't see anyone going,
Dispenser down! Push in!
Teleporters are vastly underestimated by new players. They can transport players to the front lines faster, or get them to areas they otherwise can't reach. Entrances are almost always placed at their spawn, so the exit basically acts as a respawn beacon, which results in their team grouping up around that nest, and providing it with a solid frontline defense. Good exit placement can almost entirely negate the travel time from the respawn room to the front line, and the heavy mains know exactly what I'm talking about. It can be a blessing. Which means if you take the teleporter out of play, you've effectively increased the respawn time of the entire team. Dead players come back far slower and less from a centralized area, reducing the pressure they can put on your team and the amount of people that can guard the nest, potentially leading to it getting overwhelmed and destroyed. Sentries get kills, dispensers save lives,
And teleporters win games.
Yeah. And because both teleporters are two parts of the same whole, destroying just one end renders the other completely functionless. This makes it worth it to run to the enemy spawn just to sap and shoot the teleporter entrance, leaving the engineer with a dilemma. They either run back to spawn to repair the entrance, but leave their nest without maintenance, or forget about the teleporter and just keep the rest of the nest maintained. Thankfully for you, there is no secret third option. Picking what part you go for first is up to you, depending on the situation, but the engineer himself has a variety of tools at his disposal that you may have to account for. This robot hand changes the engineer playstyle the most, replacing his sentries with mini sentries. They deploy faster than normal sentries and cost less metal, but cannot be upgraded and are less of an overall threat. Mini sentries are much more disposable than regular ones, so the engineer won't care as much about maintaining it, and may not even have a nest at all. The engineer himself often becomes the bigger threat, and basically becomes a slower scout with a little more health and the ability to pop down minis. This wrench allows the engineer, from anywhere on the map, to teleport either to his spawn or teleporter exit, albeit locking him in a short animation in the process. This thing is the main counter to destroying the entrance at spawn strat, as the engineer can waste little time getting it replaced. They can even teleport to the exit if it's being sapped, so really watch out if you suspect they have this equipped, especially since they just kind of appear at the exit. Though knowing this, if you can figure out what direction the teleporter is facing, you can trick engineers into teleporting to a backstab. Engineers running this will typically lean towards a more active and mobile playstyle, and can appear from unexpected places. This weapon applies an 8-second bleed on hit, which may seem good for catching spies until you remember the cloak halves the duration of debuffs, and considering it can't random crit, it's not actually as much of a threat to spies as it may seem. Of all the wrenches, it certainly is one of them. This is the only wrench that takes 3 hits to destroy a sapper, and to kill you from full health. Though, unlike the Southern Hospitality, it can random crit, and as many of us know, crit rates on melee are kind of stupid. Engineers using this can get a level 3 building set up much faster after one is destroyed, so killing the engineer himself is the best counter to that. While it allows the engineer to take manual control of a sentry and give it a defensive shield, when put back away, it takes 3 seconds for the sentry to regain automatic functionality, meaning if you can sneak up on an engineer using it, you can easily stab him without the sentry immediately shooting you, and the bubble shield does nothing against the sapper. Just watch out if the engineer notices you too close to the sentry, as he may use the technique. Its primary fire is okay, but it's the secondary fire that creates the big annoying energy ball. Its primary use is for crowd control and to delete projectiles, but it can also reveal you while cloaked if caught in its range. But its biggest weakness is that it uses the engineer's metal supply for ammo, so it can't be spammed too heavily in most situations. This gun is notably worse in most combat situations, but when the sentry is destroyed, it gains a number of stored crits depending on how many kills or assists it got. This is very deadly. If they do currently have stored crits, you will be able to see the gun glowing, but some engineers may hide this by not pulling it out until the last second. Not to mention, the crits are gained instantly upon the sentry's destruction, which can give you a massive shock if you aren't ready for it. Like the short circuit, this gun also uses metal for ammo. However, it does give back metal depending on damage dealt. If at close enough range, it can actually refund or even refill the metal used to fire, and it doesn't have to reload. This weapon can be very deadly if the shots connect. However, metal isn't refunded when shooting disguised spies, so make of that what you will. This weapon deploys and fires quickly. However, the spread of the shots quickly increase as successive shots are fired. This makes it more deadly at close range, but fall off quicker than other shotguns at range. While it does have the ability to drain your cloak, this weapon overall is weak and slow, so it's rare to ever see it get used. Even more rare to get hit by it. Even if you do get hit by the easy-to-dodge projectile, the cloak drain is more of a minor inconvenience than anything. Instead of being a traditional shotgun, it fires bolts that have the ability to repair buildings from range, which helps engineers not be glued to their buildings the whole time. However, the sapper blocks repairs, and this affects the rescue ranger as well, forcing the engineer to come close and use the wrench. If they're paying attention and see you about to sap the building though, they have the ability to... But while this weapon is good at keeping a sentry alive, it's not so great in combat. It actually deals the same damage as the revolver with similar damage fall-off distances, but it's also a projectile that can be dodged, so 1v1 fights against rescue ranger engineers are a bit more tilted in your favor. Destroying a nest is like figuring out a puzzle. If one approach doesn't work and you die in the process, try a different strategy next time. You can die many times in the process, but it keeps the engineer under pressure, and it only takes one good attempt to dismantle the entire nest. Observe, think, and plan. Either watch for an opportunity, or make it yourself. Your ability to be unexpected is your biggest asset against an engineer. But be aware that the engineer can learn and adapt from you as well. Their team may hate you for it, but it just gives yours an opportunity to push in and finish what you started from within.